Hello again to another Agakala React, and today we will be watching Why Europe is Insanely Well Designed from OBF. And as a European, I don't really have much comparison. Well, I grew up in Europe, I grew up in Poland, so traveling by trains and buses was kind of always a thing. So I'm not sure what to compare it to. I mean, I just see differences between, let's say, Poland and Ireland, and I think traveling by public transport in Poland, it's more prevalent there than is in Ireland, but it's not unavailable in Ireland. It's just where I'm living. There's obviously buses, there's train and stuff, but it's more. Most people actually kind of still travel with the car, I think. So let's just see and actually what do they have to say.
This is a map of Europe's mass transit railway system across 33 countries. The yellow lines indicate the presence of a train line, and as you can see, it's very dense. There are hardly any spaces where there isn't
Sorry guys,
any
it's really cold
coverage
today,
for
so I'm
railways.
using a blanket.
Now, if we compare this to a map of railroad tracks in the US, it's a different story. While parts of the US have some good mass transit, there are large areas of the country which isn't covered by Amtrak, the nation's largest passenger railroad service. But let me show you another map, this time of high-speed rail in Europe. Now obviously, high-speed railways aren't going to be as common as regular speed railways, as they require excellent design, strict planning and massive investments. And yet, as we can see, high-speed rail is present in Europe, which is a stark contrast to the US, as you can see from this map. While the US does have some higher speed rail, like the Aquila line in the Northeastern Corridor, it's hardly an effective map of transport solutions. And the Aquila line isn't really that fast either. It can reach about 150 miles per hour, but averages less than 70. This is not the case for Europe's insanely well designed railroad system. And you have to remember that Europe's system accomplishes this while spanning 33 different nations in a very diverse continent. And I know what you're probably thinking. This is just because Europe is smaller than the United States, which simply isn't true.
Yeah,
While
I don't
the
like
European
when
Union is
people saying
smaller
that.
than the US, continental Europe has an area that is about 1.04 times as much as the US. So we can dismiss this argument that the United States can't be that well designed because it's too big. Europe simply is better designed. But if you're American, you might not understand why railroad tracks or public transport as a whole is so important. I mean, driving a car works fine, right? Well, no. And Europe showcases why a primary focus on private transportation is so detrimental to a well-functioning transit system. Look at these maps. They show the US road network versus the EU's. And as you can see, the EU's road network is not nearly as impressive as the US's. And yet, when you look at some of the most congested cities in the world, European countries don't feature particularly prominently in the global rankings. This is pretty shocking information because you'd assume that the country with a more expansive road network has a lot less congestion, especially considering the United States has devoted lots of time and money to their highways. So how come Europe is less congested when they have fewer roads? Well, it all comes down to disincentivizing the use of cars and, most importantly, making an attractive alternative. Europe does this by having both private and public transportation infrastructure, which technically the US has as well, it's just a lot worse. But on top of this, Europe makes it pretty expensive to buy, own and use a car.
I don't think it's even that it's expensive to buy a car and stuff like that, because it's comparable. Yeah, maybe the petrol is more expensive than it is in America, but I'm just thinking that it's a mindset as well. Like, European people have no problem using public transport. It's not if you're gonna say to someone in Europe, or you're gonna go from point A to point B with in the train, it's not going to be looked down. People are not going to say, oh, why would you do that? It's blah, blah, blah. Like, even I know from my husband that, well, he's American, so I know from him that if someone takes, let's say, a bus or a train or something like that in America, it means it's poor. Literally, that's what he said to me one time. And it's a mindset in America that if you're using public transport, you mean you're poor, and having a car, it's like a step up, I think, or something like that. And in Europe, using public transport, it just means you're being, it's just convenient. You don't have to worry about parking car and things like that. You're just buying the ticket and you're going, and most of the time you can't get there. So that's how I think it is. I'm not saying it is true, but let's keep watching.
Is achieved by having high taxes on vehicles and gasoline. In fact, here's a map of worldwide gasoline prices. As you can see, European nations are in the top rankings, while the US lies at the bottom, charging very little. But let me be very clear, it's only a good idea to make it expensive to drive a car if you have an attractive alternative, which America doesn't, but Europe does. I mean, obviously this wouldn't work in the US with its current transportation infrastructure, but in Europe, this is a great strategy because you make the roads less congested for those who actually need them and give everyone else an affordable and efficient alternative, being Europe's amazing public transport.
I think the other thing is I kind of often see is, I think I've seen comment in under something basically stating, like some American was saying that, oh, European cities, it will just works in cities and it's not going to work in America because I don't know exactly what was his point of going, because America have a lot of cities as well, but a lot of those cities that have a good reliable public transport. So I think the thing is as well that European cities are much older as well. A lot of the places is just not going to be demolishing parts of the old neighborhoods to just build. Obviously that did happen, but I'm not saying it's gonna be happening to build a highway or something like that, like it did apparently happen in a lot of American cities. So I think that's as well. And even if you think about it, the fact that it's the space, it's not as I think the people in Europe are kind of more denser, or I don't know. Okay, let's just
like the trains on the railways. This is arguably the better strategy because even though the vast majority of Americans have access to vehicles at around 91% and gas is comparatively cheap, it still leaves 9% who don't have access to vehicles. What are these people who can't afford a car supposed to do? I mean, sometimes public transport isn't even an option or simply too expensive for many. So you've now actively excluded those who aren't exactly the most well off from society. To make matters worse,
wait, I'm getting a bit tangled up here with the cords and stuff. Okay, so like I said, I definitely think that better public transport in America is absolutely possible. It just have to be need. There's a lot of things that it's possible to change in multiple places. People have to be willing to do it. And if there is no will, there will be no change. And I think that looking at this like that is just kind of important because it's just basically you have to show a will, like the community would have to show a will for changing something and making, let's say, public transport in America better than just, oh no, I have a car, I'll be fine and stuff like that. Like, yeah, a lot of people in cities in Europe have a car as well, and they just travel to, let's say, outskirts of the city and then using a tram, a bus, or a metro or something like that to get to their workplace, and that works too. And it's possible that I haven't heard about it in America. I'm presuming there is something like that, but we actually used something like that in Berlin last year when we went there for a day. We drove to outskirts of Berlin, parked the car there for free, and then you just pay for the fare for the ticket for the city train. And I think that was very good because we didn't have to worry about actually looking for parking everywhere we wanted to go. There was plenty of parking spaces in that parking lot. There was a train station literally 2 minutes away from it, and just got there, got back, and it was perfect. We just kind of walk around Berlin and that was fine. And I think that's a very good way of arranging it and basically making it possible. I do realize that Berlin have there's some kind of fare that you can't really drive unless you're living in there. You can't really drive into the city anymore unless you're gonna pay and have some kind of sticker, but I'm not sure how that works. Okay. The back and the voice, and here we are.
These actually got rid of their public transport to make room for more cars.
Yeah,
I'm not joking.
I hear that too.
American streetcars like trams were actually removed to make way for bigger roads. Absolutely insane. Compare that to Oslo, Berlin and Madrid, where discussions are underway to restrict or even exclude most cars from the city centre. And let's not forget that
Paris
when you
as
have
well.
cars, you also need somewhere to park them. And this is where things start to become rather ridiculous. You see, the
In
United
America
States
especially.
has 2
More parking,
billion parking spaces for 250 million cars. That's 8 parking spaces per vehicle. In Europe, it's pretty much a 1-to-1 with around 250 million public parking spaces for 300 million cars. But to emphasize the ridiculousness of this even further, the area that the US dedicates for car parking is actually larger than the area dedicated for housing people. It's honestly unbelievable that people are being squeezed out of American cities due to regulators wanting to make more room for parking spaces. This simply wouldn't fly in the EU, as it has a whole policy dedicated to improving urban planning. See, the EU spent 115 billion euros between 2014 and 2020 to improve city design by making it smarter, greener and more connected. Simply meaning they allocated funds to make their cities more efficient, more connected, and better for the environment. And better for the environment they really are, as the average resident in a typical Western US city, such as Los Angeles or Phoenix, contributes approximately 6 times more carbon to the atmosphere per capita than an average European city resident. This is purely the result of not having effective transport solutions, which saves resources and allows people to move about efficiently. And exactly that, moving about efficiently is something most of Europe's citizens are able to do as a result of the European Union. See, most of Europe's nations are in the European Union, which gives the EU citizens a number of perks, which includes a free travel area. This has been one of the most important achievements of the EU, as it makes it possible for an EU citizen to travel freely to other EU member states and stay for up to 3 months. All they need is a passport or even just an ID card. No visas, no trips to embassies, no form filing, just head straight up.
I'm not sure. No, he says that it's that the EU citizens can go to other EU's country for just up to 3 months, because as far as I'm concerned, citizens of EU can travel within EU freely. There's no time limit. Obviously you have to pay for your boarding and things like that, but there is no such thing like 3 months maximum. That's for someone who is from outside the European Union. I'm not sure, maybe I misheard him there.
This makes it incredibly easy to travel, study and work in other countries and communities, and having this level of centralization is very important to good design, as it gives the smartest people the opportunity to work where they are most useful. And since good design obviously requires a lot of complicated problem solving and planning, this is very smart. Another smart thing is the incredible biking infrastructure we see in Europe, perfectly illustrated by this map of bike path density in Europe.
Wow.
All the purple lines are bike paths, and there's clearly a lot of them, especially towards the left side of the map, but that's just because this is the home of the Dutch, the Netherlands. Now, the funny thing is, I won't be able to compare this to a map of bike path density in the United States, because such a map hasn't been made. At least I wasn't able to find any, and I can only wonder why. But anyway, what Europe and also the European Union has achieved is pretty remarkable, as it's hard to think of another set of such diverse countries where you would be able to travel so freely, in an efficient and inexpensive manner. I mean, you can literally get from Paris to Amsterdam, for example, in just 3 hours for around $30. Imagine being able to travel all over Asia without any border crossings, checks or visas, and being able to stay for months at a time. That would be truly amazing. And let's not forget that European design has always been distinctive and very successful. In fact, the continent's history of design and interconnectedness serves as a model for the rest of the world. But even though Europe and the EU are pretty great and have amazing infrastructure, they obviously aren't perfect. I'd love to hear some of the reasons it might not be, so leave a comment down below if you have some thoughts on this. But that's it for this video, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.
It's a very well done video, and obviously you have a lot of good points, and I kind of was talking over it, so you kind of know what I was thinking about it. The 2 billion parking spaces in America for 250 million cars? An overkill. Like, literally. Definitely an overkill. Yeah, I seen that I think I watched that Box video about it, that basically stating that there's more parking than there is residential homes in America. So, yeah. Alright, what do you think about it? Are you using public transport? Or are you rather not to? And why would you? Or why wouldn't you? Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!